Hegel has a reputation. For many, he stands as the philosopher of impossible sentences, abstract puzzles, and ideas so dense they seem deliberately elusive. But what if the very difficulty people run from is actually the doorway to understanding not just Hegel, but reality itself? What if Hegel's challenge isn't to solve a riddle, but to rethink how we understand growth, freedom, and truth? In this video, we're going to break down the philosophy of Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel in a way that respects the depth, but strips away the unnecessary complexity. So let's get right into it. And if you find value in this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos exploring the world's greatest ideas and minds. Hegel was born in 1770 in Stuttgart, Germany, during one of the most turbulent periods in European history. As a young man, he studied philosophy and theology at the University of Tübingen, sharing a dormitory with the future poet Friedrich Hölderlin and the philosopher Friedrich Schelling. But while his early life was relatively quiet, the world around him was anything but. Revolution was in the air. Hegel witnessed the French Revolution, the rise of Napoleon, and the collapse of old political orders across Europe. There's a famous story that captures how Hegel thought about history. In 1806, as Napoleon's army marched through Jena, Hegel wrote to a friend that he had seen the world spirit on horseback, Napoleon himself as a living embodiment of history's forward movement. What did he mean by that? The world spirit, or Weltgeist, isn't some supernatural force or divine being. It's a philosophical metaphor. For Hegel, history isn't a series of random events. It has a structure and direction. The world spirit is the unfolding of reason through time, the slow development of human freedom as it takes shape in cultures, institutions, and ideas. It doesn't act directly, but through people, through conflict, through contradiction, and dramatic change. Napoleon, to Hegel, wasn't just a political figure. He was a vessel for something larger, a moment when the old world cracked open and something new emerged. Hegel's ambition was staggering. He didn't want to describe fragments of reality. He wanted to grasp its inner logic, the way everything, from politics to consciousness, develops and unfolds. His major works, like the Phenomenology of Spirit, the Science of Logic, and the Philosophy of Right, don't just present ideas. They trace the movement of thought itself. For Hegel, reality is not a collection of fixed objects. It's a process, alive, dynamic, and constantly becoming. Being is never static. It is always unfolding. What exists is not just what is, but what is becoming. This stood in stark contrast to earlier thinkers who imagined the world as built from timeless, unchanging substances. Hegel saw something else: tension, contradiction, transformation. The world isn't peaceful equilibrium. It's filled with friction between freedom and necessity, the individual and the collective, thought and experience. And it is precisely through this friction that deeper forms of existence emerge. Consider a seed. It doesn't merely sit waiting to be explained. It carries within it the tension that compels it to become a tree. That movement, that internal drive towards something higher, is how Hegel sees reality. It is not a structure to be observed. It is a drama to be traced. So how does this process of becoming unfold? For Hegel, it happens through the dialectic, a dynamic of development grounded in contradiction. The dialectic isn't a formula, despite the textbook shorthand of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It's a way of seeing how every state of being contains within it the seeds of its own transformation. Every idea, every form of life contains internal tensions that eventually demand resolution. But that resolution doesn't return us to simplicity. It moves us to a richer, more complex unity. And that new unity will, in turn, contain new tensions. Reality unfolds not in circles, but in spirals. Take the idea of freedom. At first, it may be seen as individual autonomy, the right to act independently. But that version of freedom, left alone, can lead to isolation or domination. It clashes with the need for structure, mutual recognition, and social stability. Out of this contradiction arises a new understanding of freedom, one that integrates individual rights within a rational, ethical community, about which we'll talk more later. For Hegel, this is not failure, it's growth. Here's where things get really interesting. Hegel isn't just describing history. He's showing why conflict isn't a disruption of reason, but the very force that drives it forward. This is where Hegel's analysis of consciousness becomes powerful. He argues that self-awareness doesn't arise in isolation. It emerges in confrontation, in the struggle to be recognized by another. In one of the most famous passages of the Phenomenology of Spirit, Hegel describes two individuals locked in a battle for recognition. Each wants to be acknowledged as an independent being. But recognition must be earned. It cannot be demanded or assumed. The struggle escalates into a fight for dominance, producing the dynamic of master and slave. Initially, the master appears to win, but it is the slave, through work and transformation of the material world, who gains a deeper grasp of reality. The master, dependent on recognition from someone he subjugates, remains trapped. The slave, forced to shape the world and confront resistance, begins to understand both nature and self. In Hegel's view, consciousness does not deepen through domination, but through encounter, struggle, and labor. This leads to one of Hegel's most profound insights. Freedom is not a natural starting point. It is a developmental achievement. Freedom grows as consciousness matures, as institutions evolve, and as societies organize themselves around reason. We often think of freedom as the absence of restraint. For Hegel, this is an illusion. A person completely detached from social life isn't free. They're disconnected. Real freedom arises when individuals live within ethical structures that reflect mutual recognition. Families, civil society, laws, and institutions grounded in reason. These aren't constraints. They are the conditions that make meaningful agency possible. In this way, freedom is not something we possess once and for all. It's something we participate in, build toward, and refine over time, both personally and historically. Hegel's legacy is enormous, even if his name isn't always at the forefront. Marx adapted the dialectic to class struggle. Sartre borrowed his analysis of recognition. Political theorists, psychoanalysts, and even modern critics of ideology continue to draw from his thought. But beyond influence, Hegel offers a powerful lens for navigating modern life. We live in a world of polarization, contradiction, and constant upheaval. Hegel shows us that these aren't signs that things are falling apart. They're signs that something deeper is unfolding. That history, reason, and spirit move through conflict, not around it. What if progress doesn't mean resolution, but the courage to endure contradiction until something new emerges? Hegel doesn't offer comfort. He offers clarity, a way to see the structure beneath the confusion, the movement beneath the surface. He demands that we think differently, not in fixed categories, but in evolving relationships. Not in isolated truths, but in the long, often painful path toward freedom. Thanks for watching. And remember, the hardest ideas are often the ones we need most.